Yeah, first of all, thank you guys so much for inviting me, and this is one of the most exciting integration I want to talk about in the past few months and also in the future month as well. I can give a quick intro about myself. So right now I'm the protocol researcher at EigenLayer. Most of my time are spent designing ABSs on top of EigenLayer and also educating the general community about how EigenLayer works from all the way at the highest level to down to how the smart contract architecture is designed. Uh, Before I joined EigenLayer, I spent a lot of time in governance, working with Uniswap, Aave, Gitcoin, and mainly worked on decentralization. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good comprehensive intro about myself.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you for that background. Really excited to have you here. And before we jump into some of the questions, is it also correct you'll be attending ETH Denver?
Yes, I'll be at ETH Denver.
Amazing. So I hope we can also continue this conversation there.
I
So
would love
without
to.
so without further ado, if you haven't already read, the general idea of the proposal is to uh, create a contract that would allow rocket pool validators to be restaked on EigenLayer in such a way that rocket pool retains senior debt. In theory, retaining senior debt would mean that in cases of complete meltdown, uh, the rocket pool contracts would be able to protect the rETH holders. So this general idea is a bit of a deviation from what we've seen so far for the various types of restaking on EigenLayer. My first question for you is on the general idea of this proposal, why is it safe for EigenLayer to accept junior debt?
It's a great question. So maybe the better way to phrase that is, do EigenLayer care where its that's coming from? The question generally is yes. So that's why we have screening processes to determine what kind of LSTs and native stake ETH we take in. And in the question in terms of why does it make sense for EigenLayer to take in the junior debt tranche? I think because we take in the conservative accounting approach. So for example, if the junior debt uh, only accounts for, let's say, 3 ETH or even 16 ETH, based on whatever amount, that will be completely, we'll just do the accounting model in the most conservative way. Therefore, it's completely safe for EigenLayer from this design perspective.
That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about that risk modeling idea. So let's imagine I am a delegator in this situation. How will I be able to evaluate risks of these various AVSs? And then if I am an AVS, how can I evaluate the risks of, for example, accepting rocket pool validators?
Great question. I would say the current risk design and understanding is still very, very much in flux because we're in the very early stage of the system design. In principle, I think there's a few different ways you can think about this. Number one is, so first is from a perspective of a delegator deciding which ABS to run. From that perspective, there are a few different high level ideas you can follow, and we also encourage ABSs to follow. Number one is a very strict auditing process on the ABS itself, so we can understand for sure that this smart contract has been looked at by professionals. The second one is by looking at the ABS logic itself. So there are some ABS that could be extremely complicated with very sophisticated slashing conditions. If that's the case, then that ABS could potentially carry more risk. And so I think from a delegator perspective, looking at those two criteria would be really important. Also, in the early days of the system, we have something called the veto committee. And the veto committee can be thought of as a double trusted party that's sitting between the staker and the ABS developer. So this entity's main role is if there was a bug or something unfortunately happened to the ABS that caused a slashing condition that shouldn't have been um, occurred, the veto committee have the ability to reverse that slashing action.
Got it.
It's worth noting here that the veto committee can only reverse action and cannot only choose to slash people. So that's from that side. From the AVS side, I think the decision is very much straightforward, which is I understand there are going to be different economic value coming from different economic sources, and natively restake Rocket Pool ETH is one of the example. I think just given on track records, we know how well performing the validators are from the Rocket Pool side. So I think most AVS would be very happy to take on this.
Is there any way for these AVSs to sort of understand how much capital would be available for restaking? For example, in the future, Rocket Pool is planning on incorporating a sublinear bonding. So while the first validator might have 8 ETH of collateral, one of the later validators might only have 1 to 1.5 ETH of collateral available. In this scenario where we have scaling down to low amounts of ETH, how will an AVS consider that? Will they just be able to say, well, they have to do the math themselves and be like, okay, this node operator is on the far end of mega pools, and so they have fairly little ETH left in the security budget if there's a mass slashing event on the mainnet. Therefore, maybe we don't allow them in Espresso, but if our AVS is EigenDA, where the slashing condition is very trivial or relatively trivial, then that AVS might still allow it. How does that track with you?
So the question is, there might be, so instead of currently the junior tranche is a constant for given mini pools, it could be a function based on their validator index.
Correct.
Inside. Okay. In that case, I think there's definitely some accounting mechanism we can do on top of the smart contract architecture to still enable all the validators there to enroll. I don't see a specific bottleneck from that perspective.
So in general, data is made available to AVSs or will be made available to AVSs for evaluating validators and that are available?
Yes, because I think the question you're asking is only the amount of junior debt that are currently inside each validator. And I think those junior debts are tracked on the execution layer. Therefore, we can take those execution layer and compute to the correct stake weight for all these individual people who are being delegated to. So
Yeah,
I
that
think
makes sense.
from a design perspective, it's still totally doable, and then we don't need to exclude anyone there.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, which is the veto committee. Can you tell us about the various safeguards and multi-sigs in the EigenLayer architecture as it stands right now? As I understand it, there is the 3 of 5 multi-sig, a 1 of 9 pausing multi-sig, and then also the veto committee. So could you tell us a bit in detail about each of these, when they can do actions, what are their limitations, and who roughly is in them?
Yeah, I'm very happy to go through that. I just saw my teammate Bree joined.
Oh, sweet.
Bree, you wanna say hi to the
Hey.
community here as well?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Brianna. I'm on our staker operator strategy team and super excited to see this proposal go through and work more closely with the Rocket Pool community. And then in terms of your question for the multi-sig, so on our documentation, if you want to go and look at it, you can see like the members of the community multi-sig, which have people from like Tim Bako from the EF, Tarun from Gauntlet, like very prominent, well-known people in this space that are on the community multi-sig. And then there's like the pauser and the operation multi-sig that will be decentralized over time. Currently, it's held within the EigenLabs team.
It's great to have you here with us, Brianna. And are you also going to be at ETH Denver? Just a quick aside.
Yes, I will be there.
Amazing. Looking forward to meeting you all, and hopefully the Rocket Pool community will be connected. So on the topic of the pausers and the multisigs, great to see that information available. Could you briefly describe what the powers of each individual role is?
Yeah, I can give a quick intro. So there are three multi-sigs in the docs. So there's the operational, the pauser, and the community. So the operation multi-sig has the ability to make changes to the protocol, but it has to go through a time lock. The pauser multi-sig has the ability to pause the protocol in case of emergency. And the last part is a community multi-sig. It's a very, very large multi-sig that Brianna just talked about. And for that multi-sig, it has ability to do emergency upgrade to the underlying architecture. And I think there's a diagram in the docs page where I'm having trouble trying to send it in chat. So I'll send it in the URL. I think that captures the entire workflow and the power of each individual multi-sig and what they hold.
Got it. Thank you for the info. I see it available in the chit chat. And yeah, I see the diagram.
And for people who are listening, it's on docs.eigenlayer.xyz. And then there's a section called security, and it's under multi-sig governance.
I want to change focuses a little here and talk about steps left until mainnet. Curious, what are the major steps left? And do you have any dependencies on EIP 7002? I ask this because it seems very likely that the Rocky Pool bounty as it stands will depend on a forced exit mechanism. And while it may be theoretically possible to use pre-signed exit messages, that's a whole can of worms that's honestly probably not worth it with this EIP coming up so soon. So yeah, what remains left to do for EigenLayer before mainnet, and how does EIP 7002 factor into things for you?
I can take the first part of that, and then maybe Kaida, you can jump in on the EIP question. So today we're actually launching an upgrade to EigenDA contracts on Gorley, which will be a new set of contracts that they just finished going through the audit process. They're being upgraded on Gorley, so they will set the stage for us getting to mainnet. So it shows really great progress, shows that we're getting very close to launching. That upgrade is going through on Gorley today. All of the operators for EigenDA are aware of it, and it's a breaking change upgrade, and they're going to fix their setups for the new contracts and repoint to them, and people can start seeing like what the mainnet contracts will be. So that's super exciting, and we're getting very close.
On the EIP side, EigenLayer does not require that to go to live. But once the EIP 7002 is live, it would mean some new mechanism can be enabled on EigenPod, which we refer to it as the natively restake side of staking. The natively restake side of things. So that's the quick answer. So it doesn't block EigenLayer going to mainnet, but with that being live, we can have new features for our natively restakers.
Let's talk a little bit about that concept, native restaking. For those of you who are not familiar, native restaking refers to the idea of spinning up eigenpods. And so when you do this, the withdrawal address for the validator gets pointed to the EigenLayer contracts directly. In a sense, this gives EigenLayer senior debt over the entire position. We have since seen the emergence of what are called native liquid restaking tokens. And so in the original white paper, there was a section about how creating fungible positions on EigenLayer was not possible yet, or I believe there was a section. Yet we have come now to the point where we see a few protocols who have these native liquid restaking tokens. I believe EtherFi, Swell. In my essay, I wrote about some of the existential risks that these native liquid restaking tokens could have to EigenLayer, namely if they are used or deployed in lending markets. So my question is, how does EigenLayer approach or view these native liquid restaking tokens? And do you believe that there is some risk to EigenLayer if these tokens are looped in lending exchanges?
I can handle the risk part. Maybe Bree can touch on the benefit. I think about risk a lot. And to answer the question directly, no, that's the shorthand. There's no looping risk that happens on lending market that would affect EigenLayer. So I think the best analogy is the stake ETH DPEG that happened almost 2 years ago. Because when you do looping, and that's basically the risks are contained inside individual lending market and doesn't impact EigenLayer specifically, because you cannot loop LRTs inside EigenLayer, and you can only loop it, the same way you loop staked ETH, which is, we generally do not recommend because it involves financial leverage to our stakers and all these different other things. So that's the risk part. So the looping risk of LRTs does not impact EigenLayer. And we have a specific risk FAQ that's currently on the same docs page. It's under risks and risk FAQ. We have a specific question on that as well. I'm going to send it in chat. And if you're listening, feel free to read the entire reasoning on that front as well. Bree.
Yeah, so in terms of the LRT, so our team is radically objective with the LRTs, incredibly neutral. We think it's great to see the diversity that has popped up. Like there's a handful of teams that are building, and we think that's very good for the ecosystem to see that there's choices for users. And then just to kind of touch on a bit more about what Kaido said, so like the risks of them are external to EigenLayer, but as a team, we want to make sure that we are communicative to the users and make sure that we're loud and that they understand that it's like they're putting their collateral, their like LRT at risk in these lending markets. So to make sure that they're doing it in a safe way.
So I just want to expand a bit on the risks here. Let's imagine we're in a situation like that Steve DPEG, where a prominent LRT token experiences a large DPEG, and suddenly there's a large number of requests coming in to unstake or unrestake the tokens. How does EigenLayer handle that sudden demand for trust or capital staked to leave the system? As I understand it, AVSs, for example, we could imagine a bridge, rely on delegated security to maintain their guarantees. So if we had a DPEG, is it possible that suddenly the overall security budget falls to a threshold that starts threatening one of these AVS services?
Can you give me a more concrete example? Even the stake ETH part, right? You have less than 2%. I think, no, you actually probably 1% of total ETH stake that got withdrawn from the system to facilitate the depegging. Like, right, if withdrawal were allowed, right? The problem there was that withdrawal was never allowed, so that's why the depeg happened. So I'm not understanding the question 100% here. Do you want to maybe give me some actual numbers, like in what kind of scenario, what would happen?
Yeah, so let's imagine that while on mainnet there's a mass slashing event, and we also see a bug on EigenLayer. So we see a large redemption happening on mainnet that's clogging up the ETH queue, while at the same time we see a leverage cascade happening on lending markets relative to LRTs. So now we have exit demand coming from these LRTs, while the staked queue is already at a maybe several day long period of time. In these scenarios, we might see the same type of thing happen where there is no atomic liquidity available from the exit queue, so only the available stETH liquidity, which is 100 mil, is available. And since we see mainnet slashing event, that liquidity would probably already be used up. So it seems like in extremely rare scenarios, the security budget could drop on EigenLayer. Am I getting anything mixed up there?
Let me repeat it back to you to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So in this scenario, there's first of all a bug in the EigenLayer contract. Is that correct?
Yes, because theoretically the veto committee would stop any slashings on EigenLayer. But let's imagine that that's not working.
I see. So the veto committee is malfunctioning. There's a mass slashing event happening. So, and then the question is, would that cause more people to withdraw, right?
Well, in theory, if the LRT was a DPEG, people would arbitrage our loop, and naturally we would see stake leave EigenLayer. My question is, like, if we saw some max exodus of stake from EigenLayer, could that ever damage the security of AVSs built on top?
I think the way you phrase the question, the answer would be yes. So you're asking if a lot of stake exits the system, would a lot of stake exit the system, and therefore AVS having less security? So I would say the answer to that question is yes. If a lot of stake exits the system, then yes, AVS would have less security.
So how do these AVS systems make sure that they have enough security? Like if there's a possibility that a bunch leaves, how do they know when they have enough? I believe Sriram refers to this through attributable and pooled security.
Yes, that's one thing that's currently still very much under the research phase, and we're very happy to discuss that in the community with the community later on as well. So the difference here is pooled security is sort of the way I would describe it is, everyone putting their bucks into the same pot, and we make sure that we're all stronger together. And attributable security on the other side is sort of the security budget you can buy just for your specific AVS. Therefore, when, in this like really unfortunate and rare event happen where mass slashing does happen, you have some safeguard on your side to ensure that your AVS still have baseline economic security.
So in theory, this mass slashing, this exodus could be mitigated by the notion of the attributable security, the budget of security that's not dependent on sort of the pooled amount that the overall network relies on. So should be more secure.
Yes.
Cool, got it. So shifting gears now a little bit, I'm just curious, how big is the EigenLayer team?
The team right now is close to 40 people, and we have about, I would say, 70% of us are engineers.
Got it, got it. And is EigenLayer working with any protocols directly, like validator protocols directly, or is it letting the market evolve naturally?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So we have a operator working group. So anybody that's in here, we have some Rocket Pool community members currently in that group. If anyone would like to join, you can reach out to me afterwards. So we're working with all the large validator firms and also like solo stakers and home validators as well. We're on the testnet. There's about 1,500 operators on Goerli that have registered, and then there's 200 that are opted into EigenDA.
Could you talk a little bit more about what the working group is like, what people can expect if they join, and then also what the EigenDA testnet is like? We talk a lot about EigenLayer and hypotheticals, but EigenDA is a real thing. What have the experiences been like about it?
Yeah, so we have a Slack group with the working group members, and it's a great way for like debugging or just giving feedback on the testnet. We do a monthly call where we have AVSs do introductions, so the operators can start understanding the new AVSs that might launch on EigenLayer, and also go through like the upgrade that I spoke about earlier and answer any questions, talk about like withdrawals, and have like engineers on there too to ask technical questions. So that call takes place once a month. It's on Thursdays at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time every month. And then from there, the testnet question. So the testnet is, there's an ETH quorum to get into the active set. So it's permissionless for anybody to register as an operator. So that's like that 1,500 number that I told you. But to get into the active set for EigenDA, it's currently limited at 200 operators, and it's based on an ETH quorum. So it's testnet ETH. Whoever has the most testnet ETH, delegate it to their operator, gets into the active set for EigenDA. And then they run the validation services for EigenDA on the testnet.
Is that a technical limitation or more of a testnet thing for the limited operator set?
Yeah, it's a technical limitation due to like scaling gas costs, and that number will increase over time. So we launched at 120, and then we raised it up to 200, and then over time we will increase that number even more so to allow more in.
Are there any major technical challenges left for the development of EigenDA? I know that thing that had been floating around is the slashing conditions. Is there any specifics about what the EigenDA economic security will look like?
So in terms of payments and slashing, that's currently in design phase right now. So we'll have more updates on that probably in about 4 weeks or so once it's finalized internally and then goes to audit. So can't speak too much to that unless Kaido has something to kind of jump in from the economic side.
Nope, nothing on my side.
Got it. I saw there was a Nethermind research article that was released maybe a month ago. I'm not sure if that was in collaboration with you guys, but in that they suggested a minimum slashing condition similar to the Ethereum minimum slashing condition. Are you guys aware of any conversations going on around this tokenomics discussion, or is it mainly internal right now?
I am not familiar with the Nethermind article. So yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
That's totally fine. I definitely look forward to seeing what y'all come with for the official EigenDA slashing conditions. On a more hypothetical or future-looking question, do AVSs have the ability to work with DVT, or is that potentially on the roadmap for the future?
Yeah, so SSV and Opal have launched mainnet clusters on the mainnet as well. So it's great to see that those use cases are going live, and we're working with both of those teams as well. So DVT is definitely something to consider. And I've talked to a few teams as well who are considering running an operator that's fully for solo stakers. And it's someone from the Rocket Pool community actually that is planning to launch something like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Definitely looking forward to seeing that. Our community members are really ambitious and are willing to just go out and do things. So great to hear. I'm curious on contract upgrades. So once mainnet is live, how will contract upgrades work? Will there be a delay? And yeah.
Yeah, so that would
I
be
can take.
Yeah, go ahead, Kaido.
Yeah, so if you go onto our docs page around the same multi-sig, you'll see a time lock contract that basically all the upgrades from the contract will have to go through the time lock itself.
Yeah, it's a 10-day time lock. So even when we do these unpauses for LST restaking, that's why we make the announcement and then we queue up the multi-sig time lock transaction, and then it's able to be executed after the 10 days. So it's already been going on mainnet for the restaking, and it will be the same for any type of upgrade to the protocol.
That makes sense. There's currently a delay window of 1 week, I believe, if a user tries to unstake their LST. Can you tell me what's the reasoning behind that, and if we can expect that to go away at some point?
Yeah, so that's a security feature that if there is like a hack in certain situations, one of the multi-sigs would be able to upgrade the protocol and revert the malicious withdrawal transaction in certain cases. So it's more so of like a guardrail for a security reason, and it's not on the roadmap right now to remove. I think a lot of our restakers like the idea of it of the withdrawal delay being there.
And in the future, to enable more AES designs, the withdrawal delay sort of also serve as an optimistic fraud-proof submission window, since somebody needs to present the evidence, some slashing condition exists. Also for some other specific AES use case, such as, other layer 1 proof of stake use cases, you need to be able to have an unbonding period, which is very similar to the withdrawal queue time. So I think from that perspective, the delay could we don't currently see a roadmap item to remove this withdrawal delay.
I've heard concerns before in our community that the delay window could end up being used maliciously, in that attacker ends up pushing an upgrade through that takes the full week or the full 10-day period to undo. Is that a concern, or how is it designed to prevent such a thing?
Can you spell out the attack vector again? I think this is my first time hearing about it as well.
Right. So there has been concerns about how these pause windows can have negative effects if someone manages to compromise the contract without being detected, and then undoing the attack requires waiting the full 10-day period. Do you think that's ever a likely thing to happen?
Oh, so if in that scenario that would be the case, then we have another multi-sig that has the ability to bypass the timeline, and that's a community multi-sig. That's a 13 member from the community, such as Team Baker from Ethereum Foundation, people from Coinbase, Witness Chain, Zero, etc., who are currently on the multi-sig, and they're public, and you can see them on our docs page as well. So they have the ability to bypass the time lock. If that's scenario, would that address the concern in your scenario?
Yes, that definitely does.
Yeah, and just like one more point there too, to mitigate some of those risks, the approach that the team has taken involves optimizing the complex code processes before the delay as well.
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
Yeah, so to mitigate some of those risks that you just spoke about, the team optimizes complex code processes that happen before the delay.
What do you mean by that?
So there's like simpler code operations post delay, withdrawal delay. So there's less attack vector.
Got it. Okay, it simplifies further. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So EigenLayer generally is an evolution of the concept of proof of stake, and proof of stake has always struggled with the principal agent problem with delegation. So far, we have had liquid staking tokens that are on varying degrees of trustlessness. On one side, we have rETH, which is pretty decentralized, and on the other side, we have Frax ETH, for example, which is run by a signal validator. And in these circumstances, the principal agent problem becomes a serious consideration. How does EigenLayer tackle the principal agent problem where, for example, a node operator has a large amount of assets delegated to them and is working on an AVS, perhaps a sequencer, when suddenly they have the opportunity to steal a large of MEV and just run away? The capital that they have is been delegated to them, so it seems like they have nothing really at stake, and they would be free to run away with that MEV.
I can take that. So this is a great question. I think this is one problem that all proof of stake faces, and that's one of the main reasons EIP 7002 is currently being proposed. Some even crazier attack vector can happen, outside EigenLayer on Ethereum, where the validator pool can just hold the entire fund in hostage, since there's no execution there triggered withdrawals. So I think this discussion of the principal agent problem is definitely going to be an ongoing one, and we have some ideas, mainly from probably three sides. The first one is from a technical perspective. The one way to prevent these kind of malicious behavior is you ensure the operator key are in executing inside a secure enclave or trusted execution environment, a TE. And we're currently working with Qubits and Puffer Finance. They are two pioneers around anti-slashers and the ability to make sure the keys are not being used for the the example you just gave out, which is stealing MEV. Second way to sort of alleviate this kind of problem is very similar to Rocket Boot's design, where we have the ability, or the stakers have the ability to make sure that their specific operators have some sort of economic trust, right? You have some junior debt and senior debt design. And the last part, I think, is just a traditional social trust layer, which is currently what ties basically all delegated proof of stake networks together, where these big big validator pools have enough social capital and also trust from the community from running the operation for many years. And I think that serves as a last line of defense.
That makes a lot of sense. John Charbonneau, he works with a firm and publishes a bunch of Ethereum, Cosmos, Solana research, recently put out a piece on Stride. And in their new liquid staking module, they're mandating that their delegates provide, I believe it was like 250th, or a relatively small fraction of the overall delegate amount as independent collateral, so that they have some small amount of physical collateral there that prevents them from stealing rationally, in addition to also the social layer and hopefully technical developments. So EIP 7002 sounds like it unlocks a lot for both Rocket Pool and EigenLayer. Is there anything? One second. Sorry for that background noise. Is there anything specifically you can say that is going to be unlocked once EIP 7002 is enabled for EigenLayer?
Yeah, so I think one of the key thing that EIP 7002 enables is, if something were to happen to the ABS, the native restakers are running into, the ABS, once triggers a slashing condition, has the ability to force the natively restaked individuals to exit from the Ethereum validator set. So that's the main value unlock from EIP 7002 to the EigenLayer perspective.
And so I imagine the EigenPods will be able to participate in a greater variety of services, hopefully.
Yes.
Great. So I am coming to the end of my pre-prepared questions. So people who are listening in, if you want to start thinking of questions you guys have for the EigenLabs teams, keep that in mind as I bring on my final question for you guys. The EigenLayer ecosystem is, has been hyped quite a bit, and it has attracted multiple billions in deposits in a relatively short amount of time. So I'm curious, what do you guys think individually is the most promising thing that EigenLayer will unlock in the future in terms of ABSs? And do you think that there are parts of EigenLayer that have maybe been overindulged or over hyped?
I can go first. I think there's a few very exciting things on EigenLayer that I'm personally very excited about. I think EigenLayer's main interesting thing to me is enabling new things to be built without going through the token aspect of things. And basically you can focus on building new tech, which goes to our slogan, which is open innovation. So I think EigenDA is one of the great example. I think the way EigenDA aims to scale is very similar to Ethereum scaling roadmap in terms of the philosophy and the ethos. So I think that's without a doubt one of the most promising and interesting ABSs out there. For some, more ABS developed by communities, I think one of the one that I'm personally very interested in is ethos. So we recently had a very big category announcement titled Cosmos Ethereum EigenLayer, sort of how do we connect the Cosmos ecosystem and the Ethereum ecosystem together through EigenLayer. And Ethos and also Layer Labs, Layer 3 Labs, their name is spelled a little bit, I don't even know how to pronounce it correctly. Layer Labs, they're both, basically you can think of them as new Cosmos hub, but instead of using the Atom token, they are providing economic security with ETH. So I think those are probably my personally very most interested ones. In terms of overhyped, I don't think there are any overhyped ABSs right now. I think people are just really generally excited about EigenLayer, and I don't think a lot of people know what is the cool ABS are actually doing right now. So I don't think there's like one ABS category where I'm like it's a little bit overhyped.
Yeah, I can take it from like the staking side of things too. So it's been really awesome to see some of the like organic use cases that have popped up. So recently, one of the LRT projects, Renzo and Connext, launched that they have restaking native to like L2 on Arbitrum. So it's been really great to kind of see some of these new staking use cases as well popping up, and the open innovation ethos of the company just kind of enabling all of these builders to build out these new ideas has been really great. And I +1 to Kaido's on the overhyped.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. And ETHOS sounds pretty cool. I had not heard of that before. And yeah, it's so interesting how there's a multitude of different types of applications that can be built, from bridges to alternate layer ones to what have you, to messaging bridges across chains. So thank you guys for coming and for answering my personal questions that were sourced from the community. If anyone here in the crowd would like to speak up and ask any questions for the EigenLabs team, now's a great time to do that.
Thank you so much for all the amazing questions. Always appreciate a very thoughtful discussion.
Yeah, this was great, Jasper. You're an excellent moderator. Thank you so much.
You're too kind.
Hey, this is Ken. I had a question, Jasper.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I guess just to maybe revisit the whole thing about the forced exits, right? And kind of just thinking maybe it's easiest to discuss just about a native staker participating in EigenLayer through an eigenpod. Without 7002, right, or some ability on a pre-signed exit message, if they're participating in EigenLayer in an eigenpod and they participate in an actively validated service, an AVS, and that node operator does something wrong, they create an eigen slashable condition. How do you actually slash them? I mean, do you just penalize them on the day, in the event that they do exit someday in the future? Or is the intent of EigenLayer to say, okay, they've created a slashing condition in Eigen, and so therefore Eigen needs to go ahead and force exit the beacon validator to claim the collateral that it's due?
I think right now the entire slashing design is currently in flux. I think that both options you presented are viable options to trigger slashing conditions. So it could either, within the slashing contract, once natively restake people, validators are slashed, they are force exited, or they may not be force exited, and we'll collect, we'll execute the slashing once people start exiting from the beacon chain itself. So I would say both options are still on the table.
Okay, so still kind of a work in progress even for EigenLayer native. And then my other question, I wonder if you could just kind of opine, right? It's certainly Jasper had put in for a bounty to kind of create an opportunity for some researchers, either from EigenLayer or from another protocol or independent folks, to kind of envision or design a contract or system in which Rocket Pool could work with EigenLayer. And I wondered, especially Kaito, if you've had a chance to maybe kind of digest that a little bit, and if you could opine a little bit about how difficulty, and how, like what is the lift to come up with a vision for how EigenLayer, there could be a Rocket Pool compatible eigenpod. Is that difficult, or what are some of the parameters involved in that, or do you see it as a fairly straightforward process?
From my side and talking to our smart contract engineers, I see it as a relatively straightforward process, but I think a lot of times viewing the system from inside when actually play around with it can be quite different. So, but only right now to give you an answer, I think it shouldn't be super complicated, but also curious if other folks have some thoughts on that. Maybe it's more complicated than we thought.
I think one of the things that has to be kept in mind when this is eventually built is that it has to be able to detect slashing on both Ethereum and on AVSs, and then decide and be able to eject on either condition. Because if there is, for example, a slashing on mainnet if there's a slashing on an AVS, that reduces the security budget of that user. And so from Rocket Pool's perspective, we want them to be ejected because now they're more willing to steal MEV. That seems like a tractable, solvable issue. And we also want it to be done in a way that's trustless, ideally, and so that they're just ejected without any third party having to do it. It's possible that we have the Oracle DAO having to scan and check the AVSs to then kick them. But it seems like I don't write code, but it seems plausible to me, just theoretically, that it could be automated.
Yes, I think especially with 7002, I think it can even be embedded inside the slashing logic to kick these validators out.
Right. I imagine that's actually something EigenLayer itself will want for in itself internally. So like if it has AVSs operating on multiple services and it gets slashed on one of them, well, the budget for the other ones is suddenly at risk. And so maybe EigenLayer itself benefits from the ability to sense and eject automatically.
Yep.
Thanks for the question, Ken. Is there anything else you would like to ask?
Yeah, just one other question that would be helpful is, just in the ecosystem of EigenLayer, and I know you guys are kind of envisioning it and developing it as you're going, but is this a fair summary of what it is? Is that once a validator participates in EigenLayer through, let's say, the EigenPod, there's not really a value set on the amount of ETH, right? I mean, EigenLayer will try to disclose, well, this is a native solo staker. They have 32 ETH. This is a rocket pool mini pool that's an ultra LEB. It's only got 1 or 2 ETH of node operator ETH on this validator, but really you just provide that to a free market platform, and each of the AVSs will decide whether or not they want to take a rocket pool mini pool as part of their contributing validating source, right? Maybe they say, no, 2 ETH is too low, we don't really value it. Other AVSs may say, yeah, we'll value it, but at a 50% penalty or some reduction. It's just a free market. EigenLayer just creates that marketplace, and each AVS will determine the worth of that junior debt position. Is that a fair statement?
From the design perspective, I would say, go for it, Bree.
Yeah, I was just going to say that seems right, the way that you described it as well. So it's double opt-in, right? So the operator has to opt into the AVS, and the AVS has to accept the opt-in as well. So yeah, the EigenLayer is creating the marketplace of this to be created between the operators and the AVS developer teams.
So and just following up on that, so like an ultra low ETH LEB is something we want to get to with our mega pools, where maybe in the sliding scale, a node operator with 100 ETH might be running 100 validators, and so really there's only 1 ETH of node operator deposits kind of backing it up, and that's the only thing they can really opt into is the node operator share, right? And this kind of hybrid model that Jasper lays out, it's the rETH really doesn't transfer over. It's in the primary position, and the second in the junior position is only the node operator ETH. And so when I enter the marketplace, then AVSs may say, oh, no, that's just too risky. There may not be any collateral there in case of a mainnet slashing or a beacon chain slashing. But other AVSs may say, yeah, I'd rather have another person providing a bit of information even at that lower ETH backing, and they may allow the participation of a rocket pool, ultra low ETH mini pool to participate in that. But each AVS would make that independently, and I could choose as a node operator who to pick from, and they can choose how much to value my little bit of node operator ETH. Is that still fair?
Yep, I would say that's a fair summary.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, those were my questions, Jasper. Thank you. We might have lost Jasper here, maybe.
Hello,
I think
testing.
okay. Now we can
Okay,
hear you
sorry,
now.
my mic stopped working. It does that occasionally. As I was saying, thank you, Ken, for those lovely questions. Big shout out to Ken. Ken is organizing the liftoff event in ETH Denver. So if you are listening and attending ETH Denver, make sure to sign up to volunteer. You will be able to catch me, Ken, Bree, and Kaido at ETH Denver. I have some questions coming in from the community. This is about EigenDA. So it is currently limited to some number of spots out of a larger set of overall validators. How do you ensure that the overall set of validators is not sibyled so that one individual doesn't end up, taking up a very large chunk of the EigenDA overall network? In other words, how do you make sure that EigenDA is not being Sybil attacked so that one validator swallows the whole network while it, yeah.
I can maybe take this. So the question is basically we have 200 operators. What prevents one person using the 200 operators, pretend to be 200 operators? Is that the question? And asking the stakers to stake to them?
Yep, one person prevents to be 200 different people and ends up, becoming the majority of the EigenDA network.
I think from the code perspective, it's very hard to do any kind of these Sybil protection, since proof of stake's key idea is using stake to differentiate individual actors, and if these actors can attract stake, which is the way to prevent sibling, then from a theoretical perspective it becomes really difficult. But I think it's the same for any proof of stake system, right? Like Ethereum, if I can pretend to be 100 different validating pools and attract all Ethereum stake, I don't think there's anything technically to stop me from doing that.
I think that's pretty fair. I think we've seen on various Cosmos chains that delegation still, even though it has somewhat of a centralization tendency, doesn't end up getting Sybil attacked in this way just because, the social layer usually is willing to figure out who the largest operators are. And yeah. Another question is coming about sort of how EigenLayer has approached their mainnet launch and how that's how that contrasts to the way Rocket Pool approached its launch. So if you guys weren't familiar, Rocket Pool had approached launch with a gated launch. So at first there was only, I believe, 1,500 ETH that was allowed to be deposited. And then with time, that number was raised. And this was with the mainnet launch, not prior to the launch while stuff was in beta. I'm curious, why did EigenLayer choose to allow deposits before mainnet launch?
Yeah, so the decision to do the guarded launch was based on security. So that's why we did this in phases to let a certain amount of stake in. As it over time, it became more secure, like the Lindy effect from the smart contract perspective of things. So I think we've seen really great success in rolling it out that way, and also adding new LSTs along the way as well. So now we have this pool of stake. I think it reached over 2 million today. That's waiting and ready there to approach to EigenDA when it goes to mainnet, when operators go to mainnet as well.
Right, but my question is, why did EigenLayer choose to do that before launch started? It seems to some people in the community that EigenLayer has attracted a large amount of capital without the product being live, which could in and of itself be a risk if, God forbid, there's a bug in the code at launch, and then instead of having, as Rocket Pool did, only 1,500 ETH at risk, you immediately jump in with several $1 billion at risk.
Maybe I can take that. I think what is being live here means very different things. EigenLayer on the on-chain component is just a set of smart contracts. So technically EigenLayer is live, but what's building on top of EigenLayer is not live. So all these different example ABSs, they take a lot of time to develop. And then I think having them develop and build off-chain components is a separate question from mainnet. And accepting deposit and creating this Lindy effect that Bree was mentioning. So from like my personal perspective, I think that's actually the correct approach here, which is testing the on-chain smart contract that's going to be shared across, all time, and then allow the ABS to develop on off-chain components separately, and then slowly allowing each part to be plugged into the system.
Okay,
I was just going to add on to that as well too. I think like having like launching as we did, getting the mainnet for just restaking out too is like it gives more legitimacy for the AVS developer teams too to be like, okay, this project is real. They have this on mainnet. They have this stake there. Like they're more incentivized. They're more encouraged to build out these amazing use cases that we've chatted about a bit as well. It kind of just I think it brings some legitimacy to the idea and to the vision.
Yeah, that all tracks pretty well with me. So if we think of EigenLayer in a modular sense, the heart or the core of the contracts are already live. And so once the AVSs come out, they sort of are plug-in, and they themselves have independent risks that have to be opted into. So it's not really that the entire $4 or whatever $billion will suddenly become at risk when EigenDA launches. Really, the risk has been built up over time, since most of the core of the contracts were made live. Is that right?
Yep, I would say that's a fair categorization.
I see we have Whack asking to ask a couple questions. Come on up, Whack.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time for talking to the Rocket Pool community here. It's definitely a topic that has ignited the passions of the community. I think that's really fair to say. I have a couple of quick questions. The first one is, why would EigenLayer want to establish some kind of relationship or integration with Rocket Pool? What benefits are there to EigenLayer in this? And the second question then is, if the benefits to EigenLayer are so strong, do we need this bounty that Jasper put together to put research into this integration, or is it valuable enough to EigenLayer to just do the research themselves and integrate it themselves?
Yeah, I think from like a values alignment, like I've been a fan of the Rocket Pool community since you guys started out way back when, just for your ethos, for alignment with decentralization for Ethereum. I think it unlocks a lot of different use cases for AVSs too. Like some AVSs might really value the Rocket Pool mini pools for decentralization reasons as well. So I think there's a lot of really great synergies there. And Jasper's proposal we thought was very strong as well, and we'll definitely have some of our team take part in making sure that it's a success and it's implemented the right way, because at the end of the day, it'll be something that we want to definitely take a look at and give guidance on as well.
I guess the second part of my question was more about like the funding part, because there's been a lot of debate about whether the Rocket Pool community should be funding this research and this integration. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you see a way that this integration could happen with funding from the EigenLayer side instead of from the Rocket Pool grants, bounties, and retroactive awards committee side?
I think the EigenLayer team has expressed in the past that right now they're focused on their own internal contracts and are working just to get to EigenDA mainnet. And so this might be something that has to come from the outside community at this time.
Thanks for explaining, Jasper. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Whack, for giving us some live rocket fuel. And, I'm stealing Mav's joke, but when you report on this on Rocket Fuel, it's like you just restake some Whack content. Pretty cool.
So is there any question from chat that maybe we should ask? Sorry, it's really hard for me to read and listen at the same time. Did we miss any question from chat?
Yeah, there's another one from chat here. Question about mainnet. Will there be a cap raise again after mainnet, or will there just be no more cap from that point on?
We do not have firm plans yet for another cap raise. Like the team is very heads down on getting to mainnet, and once we get there, it's launched successfully, we'll start discussions around like what the future looks like for either removing the caps, keeping them on, but we're not there yet.
Got it. Good to know. And I'm curious, how did you guys approach the recent decision to limit points for stETH? stETH, once it passes 33% of total deposits, uh, ends up getting diluted rewards. What was the decision making or like around that?
Yeah, so that was mostly based on like finding the balance between decentralization and credible neutrality. Our like ethos is to be extremely Ethereum aligned, and we think that for the future of the protocol, doing this, doing like the cap in for future rewards, and this is just in proposal stage as well. I think there was some confusion about that post. That was just the Eigen Labs team making a statement about how we envision the future of the protocol and what we think is best to do. But if it's ever implemented, it would go through the community to have discussions on the implementation, the specific details of it as well. But we just wanted to put our voice out there that's how we envision like the best future for the protocol.
I really appreciate that. I've talked with Sriram for years now, and the EigenLayer community has always been full of rocket pool individuals. So I'm glad that we are getting our influence out there at all levels of the ecosystem. I have another question coming in from Samus. What do the mainnet contracts currently do? I know AVSs depend on each service, so I understand each AVS has its risk. But what is EigenLayer right now without any AVSs?
Kato, do you want me to take that?
I can take it. I was just looking for an article. So I sent an article in chat as well. The title for the listeners called "You Could Have Invented EigenLayer." It's a very detailed blog to go through actually how EigenLayer is designed. What does it actually do on mainnet? So the mainnet component right now is only for staking and withdrawal, and soon we'll have delegation live. And what that means is you will be able to track the relationship between operators and stakers. So that's the quick TLDR answer. And if you want to understand, what is the actual EigenLayer smart contract architecture from I would say like a 10,000 feet point of view, I think that article will be great. So you'll be able to understand what is actually happening on mainnet.
Very cool. I saw actually one of our community members post that in our Discord channel earlier today. So I'm sure it's a very good read.
Thank you.
What are some other sources you recommend individuals use to learn more about EigenLayer?
So blog.eigenlayer.xyz I think is a great place to start.
Got it. And do you have any of Suriram's different interviews that you think are the best? He's done so many and they're all really amazing. So I know it would be hard to pick.
Yeah, he's always on a new podcast, which is like really awesome. We actually launched a YouTube link. I can grab it in a second.
I got it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, with the top hits.
What is this YouTube link?
It's a playlist. It has 46 videos. So maybe it doesn't answer your question. But this is a YouTube link I shared. You can go on to EigenLayer's YouTube channel. It's at EigenLayer on YouTube. And then under playlist, there's an official EigenLayer playlist. It's about 46 videos about Sriram explaining EigenLayer in different ways to different people on different podcasts and also presentations.
Very cool. I'm sure, he's been doing so many interviews for so many years. It makes sense that there's 40 plus videos there.
Yeah, I think there's actually probably more. And this is only ones we could find so far.
If I had to recommend just one, I would recommend the recent one he did with Blockworks, because in that podcast, he goes into a deep dive on, a relatively deeper dive on attributable versus pooled security, which I think is going to end up being very key to the long-term success of EigenLayer. So give that one a listen. And if anyone else has questions from has questions in the chat, please feel free. Or if anyone listening in would now like to come up and say something, please do so. If not, I would just like to say once again how much of a pleasure it was to have you both here today to talk about this. If you haven't already read it, I yesterday released an essay I've been working on for quite a while called Hybrid Theory, the middle way between Rocket Pool and, the middle way, I don't even know my own title. It's about how Rocket Pool can integrate with EigenLayer in a way that would protect our ETH with senior debt. This proposal goes through this essay goes through the various different types of restaking currently available, and why a hybrid approach, like I suggest, would be very beneficial to both EigenLayer and Rocket Pool. This bounty was approved by the GMC, but will be going to PDAO vote, just to make sure that the DAO truly wants to do this. So thank you guys again for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Is there any final words you guys want to give for us?
I think this
I'm
was
personally
a great discussion. Thanks so much for having us.
And on my side, I think there's going to be some really exciting things we can cook up together. I think there's something I've been prepping in my backyard about some integration work, and we'll be very happy to share that when the time comes.
Did you say you've been working independently on some integration work for this, or?
Yeah, something on our side that could have a lot of synergy with the EigenLayer Rocket Pool integration.
Oh, that's very exciting to hear. Well, thank you for that. And thank you again for being here and for taking part in this call. Thank you also to the various community members that have come up and offered questions. It's been a lovely conversation and honestly one of the best community calls we've had. And fortunately enough, it's on Discord, not Twitter. So thank everyone for being here.